I went behind him sometimes and made a few changes. That'll be the stuff that doesn't quite make sense, just so you know that up front. So neither of us are really sure exactly how the word holistic fits in this, but I want to talk a little bit. First of all, I am a flight school owner. I've owned a flight school since 2012. I'm an instructor, and besides Charleston Flight School, which is fairly new, and IFR 6, which has been around for a while, also started Craft, which is now the largest flight school in South Carolina. And we did it with this simulator. That's exactly how we did it. We started with the Redbird flight simulator, and we figured out how to use it correctly after we made some mistakes at the beginning. So whenever you see this, the current state of flight training, you know what you're going to see. It is not necessarily going to be good, but there it is right there. We have an 80% dropout rate. Now, keep in mind that our market for flight training is incredibly tiny to begin with. And out of that incredibly tiny sliver, we're only keeping 2 out of 10 people. That's just an unbelievable dropout rate. So we're going to talk about why this is happening. You see I have the word perceived in quotes up here because I think when people say perceived, or the perception is, there's kind of the inference that it's not really accurate, it's not realistic. And I think people's perceptions of flight training are pretty dead on. First of all, people say it's expensive. Well, it is. Compared to almost any other hobby, flight training can be incredibly expensive. Let's compare it to golf, for example. Now, I'm a very poor golfer. I don't do it often. When I do, people beg me to stop, and you can spend a lot of money on golf, but here's the difference. You don't have to get a license to play golf. You don't have to spend a lot of money before you go out there on the course. And you can spend as much or as little as you want. You can buy expensive clubs, you can buy cheap ones. Flying isn't like that. But it's not because it's expensive anyhow. Now, part of this is our fault as flight school operators, owners, as flight instructors. When people come in and say, how long will it take me to learn to fly? We tell them, well, you know, the minimum is 40 hours. And then at least a lot of people say, but you know what? You can't do it in 40 hours. But, and here's where it comes in. The national average right now is 80 hours. You see that number all over the place. I've seen some places say it's 55 or 60 hours. Some say it's 105 hours. My experience has been it's probably closer to 80 hours. So everything's said and done, especially Part 61 schools. Well, too many flight schools are saying, well, the minimum's 40 hours, but you should be able to get done 55, 60 hours. She'll be able to solo in 10 hours. And that's not really true. And so people say, okay, well, let's see. 40 hours is the minimum. I'll probably do that. But let's go ahead and let me figure in 60 hours at the most, because he said 55, 60. I learned stuff pretty quickly. And they sit down, they work out a budget. They go, I'm not going to go out to eat every night. I'll cut my cable down to 2,000 channels instead of 10,000. And they make their budget, and then they start learning to fly. They start taking lessons, and they get to about 60 hours. They're going, oh my God, all my money is gone. I'm not even close to getting my license, and we lose them. So it's not because it's expensive. It's because it's so much more expensive than they expect. And every one of those people that drops out, they're hurting our market, because they're going to be someplace, maybe at a party, and someone says, hey, you know, I was thinking about learning to fly. And that's the person who's going to say, oh, no, you don't. You don't. Trust me, it's a lot more expensive than you think it is. They're going to tell you one thing, but it's a lot of money. Here's what we tell people, and we're pretty honest with them. We tell you 40 hours is the minimum. They say, how long will it take me to learn to fly? And we go, we don't know. We have no idea how long it's going to take you to learn to fly. It could take you, the national average is 80 hours. It may take you more, it may take you less. There's no flight school anywhere that can tell you it's going to take you exactly this many hours. Just doesn't exist. And people who tell you that aren't really being honest with you. Sometimes I'll get in the airplane with somebody, and after 4 or 5 hours, I'm like, why are you better than me already? Right? They just get it. Immediately, it just comes to them. You're like, good grief. And then sometimes you'll have people that you work and work with, and after a while, you're saying to them, maybe you ought to buy that boat you were thinking of. Remember, you're talking about a boat. Boats are fun. You can't fish off an airplane. Boats are a lot more fun. So those are the extremes. Everybody else is in the middle. We don't know how long it's going to take them. Now, here's something I do tell them, and I feel very confident. I always say, I can't tell you how long it's going to take you to learn to fly, but I can promise you this. It will take you less time to learn to fly with us and our simulator than it will if you went to school that did nothing but airplanes. I can guarantee that. And I'll explain to you how we do that. Another perception is that it's dangerous. Yeah, it is dangerous. Flying is much more dangerous than golfing or anything else, really. Uh, and I know we tell people they show up, we say, well, their drive to the airport here is more dangerous than going up in the airplane. That's not really true. Not if you compare the miles that are flown. People know that. They're in a car with somebody, and they know if something goes wrong, they can pull over the curb and stop and jump out. They can't do that in an airplane. Here's a question I always ask people, say, well, flying isn't that dangerous. Go, well, when's the last time a life insurance company denied you a policy because you held a driver's license? So you get people in the airplane, they get in there, it's noisy, it's completely foreign, they have no idea what they're doing, and they're up there with you the first few lessons, and you know what they're thinking, right? I hope nothing happens to this person over here. I hope my instructor survives through this lesson, because if something happens to that instructor, I'm in trouble. I ain't getting down. I don't have no idea what I'm doing here. And for us that are a little bit older, the older the instructor, the bigger worry that is for your flight student. So yeah, it is dangerous. But we can do something about that. Our solution helps take that away a little bit. The other thing is it's difficult. And we tell people it's not difficult. It's just different. That's all it is. I was talking to a golf pro a couple weeks ago, and he's trying to help me with my swing, the poor guy. And he goes, well, it must be the same thing with flying. I said, well, no, not really. Doing this, going out here and golfing and trying to do everything right at the same time, that takes some skill. Flying isn't hard. It's just different. That's all it is. And time consuming. Yeah, it does take time, and we can change that too. And now look at this. If we reduce the difficulty or the perception of danger and how much time, we're going to reduce the expense. It all works together. And of course, one of the complaints are our instructors. Some instructors are better than others. That's really on us. This is something that we have to fix. But we can help with that too. So here's what we're trying to do. Number one, we want to reduce the fear. People don't learn well when they're afraid. We don't teach well when we're afraid of what our learner's doing. We need to speed up the learning process, make it quicker. And we need to prioritize our client goals. And this is really the big one. And what I mean by that is when somebody walks through the door, they want to learn how to fly, and they want to do it as safely and as quickly and as inexpensively as possible. I think sometimes when a flight instructor meets somebody and the person says, I want to learn to fly, what the instructor might be hearing is, how can I get you to the airlines as soon as possible? We're not there. Our customers are not there so we can get hours on the airplane. We have to recognize what the client wants, make that our first priority, even if it means less time in the airplane for the airplane owner, for the instructor. There's a lot of times when jumping right back into the airplane probably isn't the best thing, but I can't tell you how many times I've heard uh, customers coming from other flight schools saying, I just kind of felt they were milking me. I say, I don't understand this. I come in from a flight, and I tell my instructor, I just don't understand what we're doing. He goes, okay, well then let's schedule another flight for tomorrow morning. So they go, I don't want another flight. I want you to explain this to me before we go back up there. If we can prioritize our client goals, if we can give them what they really want, and that's our ethical obligation, that's professional obligation, everything else falls into place. If we can keep them longer, if we can keep our retention rate higher, better than 20%, we increase our revenue and we make it more reliable. And it's just really a numbers thing. The happier they are, the more of them we get. Our instructors and our airplane owners are going to get more hours if they can keep those people in the seats, and that means more revenue for us as flight school owners. We have a solution. This is something that we have done already. We've already figured this out. All right, let's come from a different angle a little bit. Let's talk about tools that change the industry, things that make it easier for us to do what we want to do to achieve our goals. This is just a few examples here. Since man first picked up the first rock and said, hey, I can crack this nut open with this, our history has always been, let's find something to make it quicker, faster, easier. Well, we've got that now for flight training. That's a simulator, if we use it correctly. That's the best tool we have. That's what's going to change flight training, if we use it correctly. All right, I don't know if anybody remembers this scene from UHF. Stanley Spadowski, that's the guy that played Kramer. I can't think of his last name, Michael something. You get to drink from the fire hose. Love this one here. And we hear that description all the time. When people get in airplanes, like drinking from a fire hose. Not a good way to teach people. First of all, that's not a good classroom. We know that. I actually had one flight school owner tell me, we were talking about using a simulator. He said, no. He said, the cockpit's the best. That's the best classroom to learn to fly. I said, man, you're the first person in aviation I've ever heard in North America say that. It's a terrible place. It's noisy. It's scary. You don't understand what's going on. There's too much information being thrown at you all at one time, and you're looking at everything that the instructor has explained to you, and you're thinking, is every one of these crucial to my life here? I got to get all this in because I got an idea. I'm going to need everything in here to come back alive at the end of this lesson. And that brings us to the next one. Basically, what we're saying here, their anxiety level, their fear is so high, they're just not going to learn well. And I always tell people, think about this. Think about a class that you took in college or high school. Let's say it's high school class. That for some reason, when you were in high school, that one single class just clicked for you. You were just, for some reason, and I'm going to make something up. Let's say it was geometry. And you weren't good at math, but for some reason, when you sat down in geometry class, you were so ahead of the class, everything clicked. Just the sheer logic of it. You just got it immediately. You actually read ahead in your geometry book. It was fun. Teacher would ask you to go up there and do a problem. You get up there and you have a problem and you do it in 3 proofs instead of 5. And your teacher will go, yeah, we're not there yet. That's like next week's course. That's what we're going to work on next week. You just got it. Now, imagine that same class, you go in, sit in the classroom, and you were thinking to yourself, I not make it out of here alive. It just might not happen. I'm going to submit that you probably would not be that good at geometry. So this anxiety, this fear, this is a big deal. We can try to minimize it, but people get in the airplane, they're in an environment they don't understand, and they know they're about to do something that they need some help getting back down. You hear this a lot. I can't even begin to tell you how much time you save in the simulator over the airplane if you do it correctly. And you keep hearing me say if you do it correctly, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that too here in a minute, but I will go to places where people have a simulator, and I'll look in, and they're doing touch and goes. They're landing, they're taking off, they're coming back around, they're landing again. That's an airplane lesson. You want to see what the picture is on short final? Put them on short final 40 times in a row. That's what a simulator does. And you can do so much more in the sim. And I'll give you a few examples here. I'll tell you how we figured this out. I put both these together. Practice breeds competence. Competence breeds confidence, which breeds more competence. You got a lot of rhymey words there, but and I'm going to give you an example. This when we first got the simulator, we were kind of suggesting that people use it. Flight instructors weren't so sure about it, so we came at from a different direction. And I had a woman come in, and she wanted to learn to fly, scared to death of small airplanes, never been in a small airplane, but she wanted to learn to fly. So we got in the simulator, and I just made up this new syllabus. And we got in the sim, and all we do is repeat stuff. So I had her go through the startup checklist. Then I turned it off, had her do it again. And then I had her do it again, and do it again, and do it again. So I'm sure you remember the first few times you did the startup checklist and your students after this. Everything is, okay, let's see, throttle to 1/2 inch, 1 inch, and they're looking for the throttle, and they're putting their hand on it. And they go, okay, which one are the magnetos again? Where's the on-off? Where's the battery? Where's the master? I mean, it's taken them forever in this airplane just to go through the list. And a lot of times they're going to ask questions like, why am I doing this? And you can either stop what you're doing and talk about it then, or say, well, don't worry about that right now, we'll get to it. In the simulator, what we did with her was we could go as slow as we wanted to. And every time she touched something on the startup checklist, we said, okay, here's why we're doing this, and here's what happens. By the 4th or 5th time through that checklist, she's doing it without hesitation. We're training here to put her hands, her feet, her eyes. She knows where the fuel pressure is. She knows where that gauge is. So she knows when she's filling the fuel pump. She knows where to put her eyes and what to look for. And just a very short time, she is breezing through that checklist. And we did the same thing: startup, taxi, run up, takeoff. And after 2 or 3 sessions, hour and a half each or so, by the 3rd session, she said, I want to go into an airplane. Let's go. I'm ready. Now, remember, she came in scared to death of airplanes, very hesitant about everything. But she had done this in the sim that she felt unbelievably competent. She knew what she was doing, and she felt confident. So we go out in the airplane, and she, very first time in the airplane, went through the startup checklist, taxied out, did the run up, took off. I never touched the controls one time. Even more importantly, she never turned to me and said, well, what do I do next? Is this right? Am I doing this right? She was ready to go. And after this happened, we thought, yeah, this is the way to do it. She didn't have the anxiety and the fear because she knew what she was doing. She felt competent. She felt confident in what she was doing. So this became our new tagline: learn in the simulator, practice in the airplane. And what we told people is, we're not going to teach you anything in the airplane. We're going to teach you in the simulator. We're going to get you completely confident, completely proficient in the simulator first. Then we're going to go out in the airplane. We're going to practice it. Are there differences? Yeah, of course there are. But they already feel pretty good about themselves. And it was amazing. The difference was amazing. Here's how we did it. Very close to, very similar to what we're taught. It's the best way to teach somebody. We're going to tell them what we're going to teach you. We're going to teach you, and then we're going to tell you what we taught you. Here we change it just a little bit. We're going to sit down with them. We're going to explain what we're doing and why we're doing it. Then we're going to sim it. And finally, we're going to go out in the airplane. You're going to do in the airplane what you did in the sim. Now, we're really talking here about a lot of muscle memory items. We're not really talking PIC decision making, but here's the thing. If they feel they're on autopilot inside the airplane, for the simple things, the PIC decision making comes easier. So think about this. You first learned how to fly, first taking lessons, and you're up there and you're handling the pattern by yourself pretty much, or that's your job. You get to be in the numbers. You're left downwind. You get to be in the numbers. You look over at the runway. You go, okay, let's see. Throttle goes back to 1800. Let's see, that's the RPM. Where's the tack? Where's it there? Right here. That's the tack. All right. So let me pull it back to here. Oh, that's too. I went the wrong direction. No, here we go. All right, fine. Let's see. Carb heat, carb heat, carb heat. That's this one over here. All right. Now flaps. Here we go. Flaps. Too much. 10 degrees. There's the first click. There we go. Perfect. Oh, I got to put the nose down a little bit too. They're 20 miles away from the airport. Why? Because you have to think about everything that you do before you do it. You don't do that when you drive. Maybe when you first started learning to drive, you did, but you've driven so much, everything kind of comes automatically. That's what we're trying to get to in the airplane. Everything we learn through repetition. How many free throws do you think LeBron James has made before he played his first game? Even now, those guys are out there making free throw after free throw after free throw in practice. This is what we do with the simulator. We can't do this in the airplane, by the way. This repetition, really difficult to do in the airplane. What we do is we take every task, every maneuver, and we don't say, here's the maneuver. We say, okay, here's this part. Get this part right. Now get this part. Now get this part. All right, now do this. We wait until every subtask that we've given them is second nature. They're not thinking through it. You don't see them having to stop and go on, all right, I'm supposed to turn here, and what next? You just see them doing it. And then once they do all the pieces, then we put together. So, okay, show us a steep turn. And they've done all the pieces, so successfully they just put it together. So here's an example. Takeoff, and this we do this in our very first sim stage. The very first thing we do is we tell people we want you to stay on the center line. We put them at the end of the runway. They don't even touch the power. The instructor goes ahead and advances the throttle. He says, all I want you to do is stay right on that center line. That's all you have to do. So we're teaching them, first of all, how to use those rudder pedals, because, you know, we got some major interference. They drove here. They've driven all their entire lives, their adult lives, and they use the steering wheel. And in the airplane, on the ground, they're going to be using rudder pedals. That takes a little bit. They learned that here. And the first time they try to stay in that center line, they're all over the place. That's no problem. We put them back right at the beginning and say, okay, do it again. Okay, do it again. Okay, do it again. And they get to the point, and it's incredible how quickly this happens, 6, 7, 8 times at the most, where they're keeping that airplane on the center line easily without any issue at all. They are right on that center line. And we tell them, by the way, you know, the rudder pedals in the simulator are much more sensitive than the airplane. If you can stay on the center line in the simulator, the airplane is cake. Very easy to do. And by the way, once they're doing that thing in the center line, we start having them push the power in. Say, okay, now I want you to advance the throttle. And so we're adding another task. They're already staying on the center line pretty much automatically. We're just giving one more task. And very quickly, they're doing that without having to think about it. And this is also a really good time to teach them to keep their hands on the throttle. That's every time. You know, it's not practice makes perfect, right? It's perfect practice makes perfect. So we're in the sim with them. We tell them, keep your hand on the throttle. When they get out in the airplane, those skills translate very quickly. Once they're doing that, now we say, okay, now we want you to watch the airspeed indicator. We haven't really talked about the airspeed indicator too much because all we want them to do is stay on the center line. Now we say, all right, I want you to watch that airspeed indicator while you're staying on the center line. Let us know when you get to 65 knots. So we're folding in another task, and it takes them sometimes a few minutes to get this, but they get to the point where they're getting this very easily, and it's just automatic for them without thinking. Once they're doing that, then we start doing the rotation, rotate and climb. And by the way, you're going to have to explain to a lot of these people what rotate means. My instructor kept telling me to rotate, and I figured out he wanted me to pull the stick back, but it took me a while. That's not normal conversation, or, you know, probably shouldn't be, but this is a good time to tell them what it means. You're not in an airplane. You can always hit pause. That's the cool thing about the sim. You can say, hey, don't forget to keep your hands on that throttle. And we tell them, rotate, put your nose on that, your cowling right on the horizon immediately. Once they do that, then we start losing the power on them. Now, we do talk about takeoff briefings. We want to practice those and be able to do those takeoff briefings. But the nice thing is we can explain to them what it means. And in the simulator, we can show them. Yeah, we're going to kill the power on the takeoff roll before rotation. And very quickly, you see them, that happens, they're pulling the power, getting on the brakes, and they're doing it immediately. After rotation, you have usable runway. Pull the power, bring it right back down. And then we get to don't have usable runway, you got to make a decision. So we talk about where you're going to make that decision. But what we really get on them is pitching for their best glide immediately. And they do it without thinking. You kill that power on, they're in the air, bam, that nose goes down. They get that best glide, they nail it immediately. And I tell them, you know what, you're better than 99% of the pilots out there right now, including me. Because if I lose power on takeoff, I'm going to waste a few precious seconds by going, well, what was that? And then I'll figure it out. But who, you know, these people in the sim, they put the nose down immediately. We can't do that in the airplane. Yeah, we go up to 3,000 feet and go, okay, let's say you're taking off and lose power. What do you do? But the problem is, we seldom get them. We should, but we seldom get them in a climb situation, because putting your nose down from a climb configuration is a big difference from a level flight. They get it. They get that nose down immediately. We start talking about crosswind corrections. They're at the end of the runway. And of course, with a simulator, you can see where the winds are coming from. You know, there's a windsock there. So we discuss it. We're sitting there on the end of the runway. We're not worried about any other airplanes. We can hit pause. We can discuss things. And we explain to them how to look for that. And then what a crosswind correction is. And we have them practice that crosswind correction from both sides. We have them recognize it. And then every once in a while, I'm going to switch that wind around. I'm going to have it at their back on takeoff. And the whole idea is for them to recognize it. And most of the time, they don't the first time. We never catch them again with it, though, never the second time. What we want them to say is, you know what? I'm going to go off to the other end. I'm going to taxi off and go taxi to the other end and take off there. It's better for me. We let them take off with the wind at their back so they can see the difference. Different winds, headwinds. One thing that's really, really useful to do that you can do in the simulator is when you talk about the airspeed indicator, you ask them, what's that for? And most people are going to say, well, it tells me how fast I'm going. All right, well, we're going to sit you at the end of the runway. We're going to crank up a headwind to 40 knots. So you're not going to go anyplace. Now look at it. Your airspeed is 40 knots. You're not going anyplace. And it clicks. Yeah, this is an airspeed indicator. This is stuff that's very, very easy to do in the simulator, not so much in the airplane. And, using the runway, the correct runway, that's all part of the PIC decision-making process. So you can work on that. Okay, so this is a spot where we're going to stop for a second, see if anybody has any questions.
Okay, could you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great, excellent. So this is Harvey back again, and I want to let everybody know, I did put it in the chat section, but I failed to mention it at the beginning of the webinar, that you should feel free to type your questions into the question section of your control panel at any time. And this is the first of 2 Q&A opportunities we're going to have during this presentation. I've got 34 minutes past the hour, a little more than halfway through. And I do have a couple of questions that have come through for you, Mike. And the first one is, when you have done this at flight schools that you have worked at, have you received any pushback from flight instructors?
Yeah, that's a great question. When we first started this, and new flight instructors would come in, some of them, well, most of them never seen a simulator like this, and a lot of them say, yeah, well, I'm not really into sims. I don't know how much they'll help, and they're mostly getting that from the other flight schools they've worked at. The flight school owners say, oh no, you don't want to use the simulator. You need to stay away from that. And we would say, listen, this is what the client wants. This is going to match the client's goals, so you have to use it. And it's never more than 2 weeks. Never more than 2 weeks, sometimes less, when the instructors come back to me and go, yeah, this is the smartest thing we've ever seen. Our people are so much better prepared. So they become believers in this very quickly.
All right, very good. Another question that we have is, let me see if I can find it here. How do prospective clients, I think they're talking about prospective flight school students, respond to this method of teaching?
Oh, okay, that's another good question. And it's really a sales question because, first of all, the prospective customers take to this a lot quicker than new flight instructors. But they'll come in and we explain it to them, but what we do, we always put them in the simulator and we give them something very simple to do. We don't have them take off or land or do anything crazy. We put them in San Francisco Bay, the instructor sits next to them, and they're already in the air, they're already flying. We say, okay, we're gonna fly underneath the Golden Gate Bridge. And so they fly for just a couple of minutes, 2-3 minutes, flying up to Alcatraz, and you get a feel for it. We change the weather, explain some things. I always hit pause at least once in this, just so they can see, because I know they're listening to me, but they're flying the sim. So I can hit pause and I can talk to them about something, and now they're listening to me and paying attention. And you can see the light bulb click, and they're going, oh, this is easy. We can hit pause. This is great. Then they fly. Then I talk them. They do a nice controlled descent. They fly underneath the Golden Gate Bridge, and as soon as they go underneath, we end it. And I say, congratulations, you just flew underneath the Golden Gate Bridge. It's less than 5 minutes. It's nothing difficult, but they've done something cool, and they come out and they're always jazzed up. I mean, they see it immediately. They see the advantages right away. They come in, this is something they wanted to do and learn, and all of a sudden they did it. So yeah, new customer is the best sales tool we have.
All right, very good. And that's all we have for now, so please continue. And again, I want to remind everybody, there is in your little webinar control panel, there should be a section for you to ask questions You can just type your questions in, and we're going to have a Q&A at the end of the presentation as well, here in about 20 minutes or so. So, Mike, take it away.
All right, thanks, Harvey. All right, so we're talking about making the simulator part of our course. So there's all kinds of different syllabus out there, different syllabi, but they're all really basically the same. Doesn't make a difference if it's King or Gleim or ASA or Sporties or whatever. They're all going to be the same thing in pretty much the same order. The presentation is going to be different, but the elements will be all the same. Flight training hasn't changed hardly at all since the Wright brothers, and we're still doing the Wright brothers way. Put them up in the airplane. We're going to show you this, 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 and this. What we're saying is, don't use a normal syllabus with a flight simulator, because that's not really what it's built for. You got to change the syllabus around it. You've got to integrate your simulator with your teaching assignments. We treat the simulator like an airplane. The advantage is for most people is that it's half the price of our airplane. Try to keep it at half the price of the airplane. I know some places charge the same as an airplane. That's just a marketing decision, and that might be just as good. Considering that the sim is worth several hours in the airplane, there's an argument to be made for that. Our target's around half the cost. Is actually, I think we're a little bit more than half the cost of the airplane. The airplanes tend to change from time to time, depending how much fuel costs. But we treat it like an airplane. It's scheduled like an airplane. We teach airplane habits in the simulator. Using this correctly, and this is what, if you're a flight school owner or thinking about starting a flight school, this is the important thing. Right now, dropout rate says 80%. Just imagine if instead of 2 out of 10 people, you kept 3 out of 10. I can tell you that our dropout rate is closer to 60%, maybe a little bit less than that. And it's all because of the simulator and how we use it. But even if you just drop it by 10%, that means instead of 2 out of 10 clients that you're keeping all the way through, now you're keeping 3. That's a 50% increase, that little bit of a change. And that also means your flight instructors get more hours. So the big picture is they're happy. So Harvey put together this great little spreadsheet. I was trying to explain it to him, and he did a great job with this. So I kind of want to explain to you a little bit how this is. Up here you see, you're going to see with the 80% dropout rate and with the 70% dropout rate. And we made some assumptions here. So let's say out of 100 students, you keep 20. And let's say they each fly about 75 hours each. So you have 1,500 revenue hours. The other 80, we're going to say that, and this kind of arbitrary number, we're going to say that they flew a total of 20 hours. So now you have 1,600 hours out of them. And so your total is 3,100 hours. And that means that at $140 an hour, again, we just arbitrarily put that in there. That's a gross of $434,000. Now, let's say instead of an 80% dropout rate, you have reduced that to 70%. You keep 30 out of 100. And we're going to say they flew less hours in the airplane. 60 hours is again, arbitrary. And they also fly 10 hours in the simulator, or they buy a 10-hour block in the simulator. That's how we do it. If you figure that the sim is half of what the airplane is, you're looking at a revenue of $1,950 from your people that finish. Again, 20 hours for the 70 that did not finish. They still had the 10 hours in the sim because that's what we tell them they have to buy right up front. They have to buy a 10-hour block of time. And now we're looking at 3,700 revenue hours, and that comes down to $518,000, an increase of 84 grand, which is sweet. That's gross, of course, just by keeping one extra student out of 100. Well, 10 extra students out of 100 by reducing your dropout rate from 80 to 70%. More hours for your instructors, more hours for your airplane owners, higher revenue, and these people that are finishing up, they're saying good things about you, by the way. They're going, yeah, they got the simulator. It's really cool. Uh, Technology is really neat, and it was a lot easier than I thought it would be. All right. This is just one of the documents we use, but we have what we call a training roadmap. Everything that happens that they need for their certification goes on this. So after every lesson, we say, okay, you have this, this, and this. This box has been checked off. What we offer is a flight school in a box, basically. This is all the stuff that we use and more, a lot more than this, really. We sell a kit, and what we tell them is, yeah, we used to sell the Gleim kit. We used to sell the ASA kit. Both kits are pretty good, but they both had stuff that you didn't need, and they didn't have everything that you should have. And so we tell people, you got to buy this kit. You have to buy this book over here and throw that crap away. So we came up with our own kit, and it's everything they need, nothing they don't need from the very beginning. And by the way, that's a good revenue source. We don't rob them on the kit because it's too easy to go online and go, yeah, I can get this for a lot less. We keep it, we buy it wholesale, but we keep it close enough to the retail price that it's just as easy. We have it packaged nicely and we hand it to them. We put the whole thing together. We have the training syllabus. We've got checkout forms, policies, leaseback agreement, anything. Somebody could come in and take this flight school in a box and turn around and hit it running. Just have everything ready for them. And there are other things too. We actually offer blogs for your website. We can do that for you too. We just give you the blogs that we use, and every time we write one, we pass it on. You can see one of these says flight school policies and guidelines. That's for us. We say, here it is. You may want to change this policy or that policy. And that just depends on what you're looking for. But we know that what we do, and it's not this specifically, but the whole way of looking at it, we know this works. We've seen it work. And it works really well. We went from not having any airplanes to rent to just a simulator with a bunch of other flight schools around us to being the largest flight school in the state with 8 or 9 airplanes, and a lot of flight schools went out of business. And they tried very hard to compete. I think they made some mistakes because when we first started, we opened the sim up to all the other flight schools. So look, you can bring your people over here. You can use the sim. We will sell you block time for less. You can turn right around, sell it back to your students and make money, and they'll get done quicker. Well, what I heard was, no, thanks. One guy said, well, I just like to use real airplanes in the real sky. So, yeah, for real money, clearly. Another flight school actually said, well, our instructors won't get enough hours in the airplane. They want to get to the airlines. I think we've addressed that. That's not what we're trying to get done. Best practice. This is what worked for us. Learn it, sim it, fly it. We learn in the simulator, we practice in the airplane. We're not gonna teach you something in the airplane. We're gonna teach you here in the sim. So when you get in the airplane, you already know what you have to do. Yeah, again, there are differences, but if you already know where to put your eyes, your hands, and your feet, when you get out in that airplane and you watch them do their very first takeoff without you touching anything, you're like, yeah, this is the way to do it. This is the way I wish I had done it when I learned. And actually, that's the end.
That's perfect. That is absolutely perfect. And we've left plenty of time for questions. And indeed, we have had a few questions come in. So do you want me to go ahead and ask now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So first question in the queue is, do you have any experience with rotary wing training?
I do not. Actually, one of our instructors is a helicopter instructor, but we have a few people that already are rotary and they want to come in and get a commercial add-on. So we've done that, but it's actually training for helicopter training. We have not done that. We don't have a helicopter. Though I understand, or I've seen, Redbird has a really cool helicopter simulator. So I think the same principle would work.
Yeah, and if I can just throw in real quick, we have the VTO, which has FAA certification. It's an approved training device, and the principles that Mike is talking about here will work for learning in rotary wing as well as fixed wing, most definitely. The second question, this is a great question. Mike and I kind of have a running joke. I wrote gift, I created gift, and so I always find a way to bring everything back to gift, even if it doesn't really make sense. So I really like this question. First of all, it starts with a compliment. Mike, you're doing great with this presentation.
Thank you, Mom. I knew she'd be around someplace.
I promise it wasn't your mom. And the question is, can we use gift software as curriculum for teaching on a sim?
Oh, you mean other than gift, you mean?
Well, so the exact question is, can we use gift software as a great curriculum
Okay.
for teaching on a sim? And
Right.
my first thought is, well, gift is something you would use with a curriculum.
Yeah, I agree that 100%. And it's kind of funny that me and Harvey put this together because we kind of met the last migration when they're talking about gift. And I said, well, that won't work for me. And we talked about how we do it differently. But actually, I've going back looking at gift. I think gift works great once you have taught them the principles, and then go in and practice. I think the repetition method that we use is the best way to teach them the correct way of doing something. But now gifts can go in and actually grade them on how they're doing what you've taught them already, and they can do it on their own. That's the best part. So yes, I guess that would be the short answer.
Very good, very good. Okay, and I would strongly agree with that. Of course, I will say that you can do things with gift that you can't really do. So, let's see. Okay, here's another question that we had come through. If I use this method, can I expect to decrease my dropout rate like 10% like you had in your example?
Oh yeah, I would say it's going to be more than that. If you do this correctly and you use the simulator the way it should be used, I see a lot of people, a lot of flight schools, they go, well, we use the simulator if the airplane's not, if it's down, it's got a flat tire, it's bad weather, it's, for whatever reason, we can't fly, so we'll use the simulator instead. And I think that's the wrong use of it, and I think that gives the wrong message. I think if you right at the very beginning say this is an integral part of your training and we're going to show you why, I think when they get out of the sim, the first time, they're going to go, well, I learned to do this and this and this. They see, they're not discouraged. And yeah, it costs money to buy the sim, but it really reduces the amount of time they have to be in the airplane. I always tell them, it's good, and you can actually do it in 37 and a half hours. We've have actually had a couple of people take their check ride and pass it 37 and a half hours. They're exceptional pilots right from the very beginning. But I think that I know we've seen it, that when people come out of that sim, they feel better about themselves. They feel like they've learned something, and the instructors see it in the airplane. It doesn't disappear. They come back to me and go, yeah, he did great. He did all this stuff in the sim, did great. He was anxious to go in the airplane, he knew what he was doing. I had to help him out a little bit here and there, but nothing like I would have done at first flight for somebody else. And they feel that. They get up in that airplane and they just don't, they feel a little bit safer. They feel a little bit more confident, a little bit more competent. So yeah, I absolutely think if you do this correctly, you'll see reduction. And like I said, we're running probably closer to 60% and maybe a little bit less than that.
Okay. We do have another question, but before we get to it, I want to say something before people start deciding that their questions are answered and they're going to drop off. I want to repeat something I said at the beginning of this webinar, which is that this presentation is kind of an appetizer. This is a high-level view of information that we can actually come to your flight school and deliver in full. We can come into your flight school. We can do a presentation that includes all the details that are kind of behind the information that you got today, and actually help you implement this so that you really will see your revenue increase, and at the same time, your dropout rate is going to go down. I mean, there's just no way to avoid your dropout rate going down, and you'll be able to offer your prospective students, your prospective customers, lower costs. So if you are interested in that after our, get in touch with us here at Redbird. I'm pretty sure all of you have our contact information, but you can just go to redbirdflight.com and you can contact us through the website, and we can discuss you coming, or having Mike. Actually, Mike himself will come out to your flight school. He will talk to stakeholders. He will talk to CFIs. He will do this presentation in depth and get you set up and on your way. And by the way, that includes the flight school in a box, which is really, really, really cool stuff. So let's see, one last question here. How long can I expect to wait before I see results in my business if I implement this plan?
That's a good question, and I only have our flight school to use as an example. I mean, we saw it immediately. We immediately saw people becoming more engaged and staying with us longer. Right from the get-go. It's a whiz bang type of thing. People walk in and go, man, that's cutting edge technology. This is really modern stuff. And they get in it and they come out like, I'm ready to go. It's just a fantastic tool if it's used correctly. It's kind of like, let's say you're a construction guy and you're going, you know what? I'm building these houses and I got this this nice hammer and everything, but I think I can do a lot more if I get me a nail gun. Yeah, I'm gonna get me a nail gun. So he goes out and gets himself a nail gun, and now next time he's building a house, he's got the nail and he's trying to hammer it in with the nail gun. He's got the tool, he's just not using it correctly. So this is really aimed at people, not just people who are thinking about getting one, but people who have a simulator now and going, I just don't think I'm getting everything I want to get out of this. Yeah, you can, and more.
Excellent. Very good. Okay, well, that's all the questions that we have in the queue. Uh, I want to thank everyone for attending today, and I want to let everybody know that we will be doing this presentation again on Thursday, September 6th. But of course, next week, hopefully, we'll see many, if not most of you at Oshkosh. We're out there every year. We will be again right next to the Pilot Proficiency Center. And be sure to check on the redbirdflight.com website for upcoming webinars. We're kind of ramping up doing more webinars. We found that our clients and our prospective clients really like it. So we like doing things that you all out there like.
And
Mhm.
if I can add something, Harvey, I'm going to be there at the Oshkosh booth with IFR6. So if anybody has any questions or want to ask me directly, I'll be there.
That's absolutely right, and I'm embarrassed I forgot that. Oh yeah, I did forget you were going to be there. I forgot to mention. Well, that's on me. All right, so everybody, thank you once again. Wish you all clear skies. And remember, you can contact us through our website at redbirdflight.com. Have a wonderful afternoon.